This all started with three very different eggs. One massive ostrich egg, a handful of duck eggs, and a carton full of tiny quail eggs. I stood there holding the largest egg I had ever seen in one hand and the smallest in the other, and a simple but ambitious idea came to life. What if I could hatch all three types and raise them together? What if I could find out which one would become the best companion, the ultimate pet? It sounded crazy, maybe impossible, but that was exactly why I had to try. So I ordered them, 10 ostrich eggs, 20 duck eggs, and 100 quail eggs. Each egg would need its own special incubator, its own set of conditions, and its own kind of patience. I cleared out my home office and turned it into an artificial nesting ground. The first few nights were quiet, filled only with the soft hum of incubators and the occasional flicker of hope. Soon enough, the quail began to hatch. It started with a slight tremble in one egg, then another. Before long, tiny cracks formed like spider webs across the shells. One after the other, they emerged, fragile, squeaky, smaller than a coin, and barely heavier than a piece of pasta. They stumbled about, wide-eyed and seemingly unaware that they had just entered a chaotic, human-built world. Some struggled more than others. A few couldn't quite break through. My heart ached for them, but I waited, watched, and rooted for every tiny peep. The sound level in the room changed almost overnight. My once quiet office now echoed with the high-pitched chirps of dozens of newborn quail. Feeding them was easy enough, but the realization hit me. This was only the beginning. The ducks were next. Their hatching was slower, more deliberate. I watched one egg for nearly 12 hours before the first duckling finally peeked through a crack. I was mesmerized. The egg shook, twitched, and eventually split open. A wet, dazed duckling stumbled into the world, took its first breath, and blinked straight into my soul. It didn't know it, but it had just imprinted on me. I was the first moving thing it saw, and in its mind, I was its mother. By the time the sixth duckling hatched, I had a parade of little webbed feet following me around the house. They waddled after me like tiny, fluffy shadows, through the kitchen, into the bathroom, even under the bed. There was no escape. I had become their entire world. And just when I thought I had my hands full, I looked at the ostrich incubator. Their shells were the toughest in the animal kingdom. So thick they could hold a grown man's weight, but I spotted a tremor. One of them was alive, trying to break free. This was where everything changed. If hatching eggs was a challenge, raising what came out of them was an all-out battle. My once orderly life became a revolving door of cleaning, feeding, and most of all, watching. Watching to make sure no one got trampled, no one got left behind, and no one felt alone. The quail were adorable, but they were also fragile. One of them couldn't walk. Its legs bent awkwardly underneath its body. I panicked. This wasn't part of the plan, but I remembered something I had read online, a trick using a tiny strip of bandage to support its legs. With trembling hands, I wrapped it up and whispered, "You can do this." I didn't know if it would work. All I could do was hope. Meanwhile, the ducks were growing fast. Too fast. In just days, they had doubled in size. Their bond with me deepened. They couldn't sleep without being near me. I tried putting them in a separate room, only to hear hours of distressed quacking. So I gave in. They slept on a blanket beside me. I became a full-time duck parent. But then came the black duckling. It hatched after all the others. A dark, almost ink-colored fluff ball. Different. It stood out, and the others noticed. They avoided it. Some even pecked at it. I couldn't let that happen. Not again. I came up with a solution. I turned on a red laser pointer and gave them something else to focus on. A target they could all chase together. And it worked. For the first time, the black duckling wasn't an outsider. It was part of the game, part of the team. This moment of unity filled me with joy, but also reminded me that things could fall apart just as quickly. Because the ostrich eggs were about to hatch, and I wasn't ready for what came next. The first ostrich to hatch shook the ground, literally. A heavy crack echoed through the room and a portion of the thick shell broke open. Inside was a creature unlike any I'd seen before, prehistoric in size and sound. Its chirps sounded like echoes from another era. One after another, the giant chicks emerged, wobbly, clumsy, astonishingly strong. Then came one I named Peanut. Smaller than the others, slower to stand, Peanut was different, quieter. I had to help peel the final bits of shell off its head. Maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe that's what made Peanut weaker. The days passed, and while the other ostriches stomped around the room like dinosaurs in diapers, Peanut struggled. He didn't move much. He didn't eat much. Something was wrong. My gut told me, and my heart refused to accept it. By day 3, Peanut collapsed. I rushed him to the nearest exotic animal vet, which was over an hour away. I held his giant feathered body in my arms, whispering, "Hold on, buddy." I could feel his warmth fading. The vet said it was an infection. Too fast, too aggressive. His little body couldn't fight it. They tried everything. But that night, Peanut passed away. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. The loss shattered me, but also grounded me. These weren't toys. They weren't YouTube views. They were lives, and every single one came with love, joy, and risk. Weeks passed. The animals grew. The quail learned to fly, sort of. They flapped their way to curtain rods, light fixtures, and my head. The ducks became toddlers in feathers, loud, playful, and constantly wet. They followed me into the shower, the kitchen, even to Zoom meetings. The ostriches? They were now chaos on stilts. They chewed through wires. One swallowed a button from the remote. Another tried to fight its reflection in the microwave. My home? A disaster zone. The air reeked of hay and bird food. My bathtub had become a muddy swamp. I hadn't slept in days. I missed silence. I missed clean floors. I missed not being mistaken for a mother bird. But more than that, I knew they deserved more. Space, sunlight, a real home. So I packed them all up. Every quail, duck, and ostrich. We drove over 20 hours across the country to one of the largest animal rescue sanctuaries in the nation, run by my friend Ben. When we arrived, I cried again. This time, not from grief, from relief. The quail got their own peaceful enclosure. The ducks had a pond of their own, and the ostriches, free to roam across acres of open land, kicking up dust under the wide blue sky. I watched from the fence as they took their first steps into their new forever homes. Peanut wasn't there, but I carried him in my heart, and even though I went home with an empty car and a quiet house, I felt full. This was never about which pet was the best. It was about the journey, the case. And the love that still echoes every time I hear a tiny chirp in the back of my mind. Looking back, I realized this wasn't just an experiment or a video project. It was a crash course in compassion, in vulnerability, in responsibility. I didn't just hatch birds. I discovered parts of myself I hadn't met before. The caretaker, the problem solver, the soft-hearted protector who stayed up all night for creatures that couldn't even say thank you. I also learned that parenting, no matter the species, is both beautiful and brutal. You give everything you have, and sometimes it still isn't enough. But that doesn't mean it wasn't worth it. Every chirp, every splash, every peck and poop and panic attack, it all added up to something real, something lasting. And now that they've moved on to a better place, it's my turn to grow, to take what I've learned and share it. Maybe with more rescues, maybe with people who need to hear that love, even messy, inconvenient love, is still the most powerful thing we can offer. So if you're still watching, thank you. Thank you for being part of this chapter. This isn't the end of my journey, it's just the end of one story, and maybe the beginning of a whole new one.